3. In the beginning, I am unfairly discriminated against. Who am I? 1. I am that person whom you failed to create some years ago, last year or maybe a few moments ago, the time when you avoided having sex or deployed contraception. There are billions and billions like me, all unfairly treated. Those of you lucky enough to exist speak keenly about the value of human life. You make great efforts to keep people alive. You have legal systems, moral pressures, checks and balances designed to prevent people from being killed. You have hospitals, vaccinations and screening programs, safety nets, health regulations, well-woman and well-man clinics, all to assist the living to carry on living. Virtually all of you are appalled by infanticide, at killing children, at killing babies. Most of you are repelled by very late abortions. What is the morally relevant difference, you say, between a newborn baby and a fetus in the womb a few hours before birth? Some of you already treat abortion as morally equivalent to murder. If late abortions are akin to infanticide and hence are morally wrong, what of slightly earlier abortions and earlier, as we count down the days? What is the morally relevant difference between a fetus of 16 weeks and one that is a day younger, and what is the relevant difference between that fetus and one a little younger still? We may move on down the days in this way, going lower and lower, until we reach the moment of conception. Conception. That's what marks the difference. Before conception, there is no individual entity that is likely to grow into a person. There is no potential person present at all. It is only once the egg is fertilized that we have something that is potentially a person, with feelings, intelligence, loves and desires. I charge you with being spacist and numberist. I would even say, materialist, but for the fact that philosophers understand the term peculiarly. Yes, the egg and sperm, preconception, have some distance between them. Their structure or matter is greatly spaced, but why is that numerical and geographical fact morally relevant? That there are two elements does not show that the twosome is not a potential person. True, we cannot tell beforehand which sperm will fertilize the egg towards which the sperms are heading, the egg which will grow into embryo, fetus, baby, child and adult. Undoubtedly, though, before fertilization, there must have existed the particular sperm, let's call him Herm, which would end up fertilizing the particular egg, Eguina. Were that not so, that fertilized egg would not have come about. Not to have engaged in uncontracepted sex at that moment, whenever it was, would have prevented Herm and Eguina from uniting. It would have prevented creation of the fertilized egg and hence the fetus, baby and adult life that people so greatly value. If it is wrong to kill people, isn't it also wrong not to create people? To get to the nub of the question, let us move to babies. After all, there are simple replies to the question above. One would be that people usually do not want to die, but people who are not yet created have no wants at all. Well, not yet. What is wrong with killing a baby? That is no outrageous question, but a request to work out what justifies the common belief that it is typically morally wrong. Philosophers, rightly, ask questions, even if unsettling, and sometimes they ask the questions because they are unsettling. Of course, there can be philosophical worries whether or not certain questions, in certain contexts, should even be raised. That leads into the value of free expression, reviewed in Chapter 9. Here our question, babies, is in a philosophical context. What is wrong with killing? If the answer is simply in terms of the loss of its future life, which has value in itself, then abortion is also morally wrong. This is because had the abortion taken place, that future life, child, adult, would also have been lost. That future life would also have been lost had successful contraception been used, preventing the creation of the fetus which grew into the child who grew into the adult. Moving yet further back, sexual abstinence would have been wrong. It too would have prevented the existence of the child and later adult. Being pregnant, of course, prevents the coming into existence of other fetuses. No one is arguing that it is possible to create all possible lives. Making more and more lives is also undesirable, if we are unable to support them. The puzzle is that if what is wrong with infanticide and abortion is the loss of the future person who would otherwise come about, then contraception and, indeed, sexual abstinence, other things being equal, are similarly wrong. The chaste are as bad as the baby killers, at least with regard to the loss of the future lives that would otherwise exist. Yet most of us believe that to be a crazy conclusion. It is a conclusion that would paradoxically pop chaste monks and nuns, those committed to vows of chastity, next to murderers. Arguably, the mistake is to think that what makes killing a human being wrong is the loss of that being's future life. A more plausible account is that what makes it wrong is the loss that the individual suffers. Consider Esmeralda, just a usual person, even if unusually named. She has a sense of her self continuing into the future. By killing her, we thwart her desires, her aims, her intentions. Fundamentally, Esmeralda wants to go on living. That is why it is wrong to kill her, and why it may well not be wrong to kill someone who really does want to die, why voluntary euthanasia and assisted dying should be permitted. Further, if we have a being that lacks any sense of itself continuing into the future and so lacks any desire for that self to continue, then killing that individual painlessly cannot harm it. Of course, there may be other reasons, good reasons, why it is wrong to kill such individuals. We may, for example, cause distress to others. In this approach, sexual abstinence, contraception and abortion are not wrongs to the individual who fails to develop. That is because they involve no direct harm to a being that has a sense of self continuing into the future. No one seriously thinks the egg and the sperm have desires and intentions. No one seriously thinks the fetus does. For that matter, very young babies also lack such a sense of continuing self. Infanticide and some abortions, though, will still be wrong, insofar as they cause distress to others, notably and often the mother. Further, there could well be adverse knock-on effects, were we to allow rationality to diminish our natural discomfort or distress at very late abortions and infanticide. So, this chapter is no call for infanticide. For a response to the approach, as above, that seeks to justify us in not worrying about those whom we do not create, consider the principle, a version of the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Most people are pleased to have been created well. They tend to say that, though it could be self-deception. Were you to start creating children tonight, it is likely that the outcome would be people who are pleased that you did unto them what you are pleased was done unto you, namely, be created. Does creating people count as doing something good for them? Those people do not exist, until the good is done. So, if you do nothing, surely there is no one there to have missed out on creation. Still, if you do believe that creating people is good for them, then you know your chat up line for tonight. But beware, beware, the consequences. 4. The violinist. Should you unplug? You wake up one mundane Monday, only to discover that this Monday is far from mundane. A tube runs from your body to an unknown man a few feet away. A violinist, it transpires, is plugged into your lymphatic system. Although bizarre, the tale possesses considerable relevance to the everyday. Before we bring the tale down to earth, let us fly this fantasy. How did the violinist come to be plugged into you? Well, maybe you were in hospital for some minor tests. While you slept, the violinist, unconscious, was rushed into the ward. The doctors knew that the only way to save him was to plug his system into yours. Fortunately for the violinist, and unfortunately for you, your lymphatic system possesses a rare property, one essential for maintaining the violinist's life. The violinist's use of your system does not endanger your health, but, while plugged, your life is somewhat inconvenienced. The violinist will go everywhere with you, which could well give rise to embarrassments in your social, personal and romantic life. Right now, the violinist is sitting by your bedside. He is fine, so long as he remains plugged. You flick the tubing connecting his body to yours. He is well aware that you could simply disconnect it. All would then be well with you, all not well with him. He would die, perhaps a horrible death. He needs you in order to live. Understandably, the violinist begs you not to unplug him. It is life or death for him, of convenience or the opposite for you. Yet there are other factors. He has no right to use of your body, or does he? He surely has a right to life. By unplugging him, would you not be violating that right? You would certainly be causing him to die. Are you within your rights to unplug the violinist? One line leads to the answer, yes. You granted him no right to your body. No agreement was made. He is, so to speak, trespassing on your body, so, you are well within your rights to remove him. True, he would die as a result of the removal, but that is neither your intent nor your fault. It is an unfortunate consequence of you asserting your rights. If, miraculously, he were to survive, you should have no objection. Presumably you would feel relieved. In unplugging him, your aim is not to kill him. We may feel queasy with the above response. Are you not violating his right to life, by insisting on the higher priority of your right to be UN trespassed upon? Suppose he merely needs use of your body for one day, until some drugs arrive. Would you still be within your rights to insist on unplugging? The thoughts above raise two fundamental questions. One question concerns what is involved in possessing a right. Another question concerns morality's extent. On the first question, people speak readily of everyone having a right to life. People do not speak so readily of everyone having a right to whatever is required for life. The violinist has a right to life. He requires use of your body, but he does not have a right to that use. Millions of people suffer from malnutrition and disease that will kill them. They have a right to life. Do they therefore have a right to assistance from you, for example, by your giving to relevant charities? Someone needs a kidney transplant. Does he have a right to your kidney? After all, you only need one. We spend considerable money on luxuries. We assume a right to spend our money as we wish. We assume that our right outweighs the requirements of others, those with the right to life, for maintenance of their lives. Rights talk is cheap. What is costly is providing means for people to exercise their rights. Possessing the right to life counts for little if it fails to carry any duty on others to enable that right to be fulfilled. 'Tis small comfort to the starving to know that they have a right to life, but no right to the excess food that we keep for ourselves. Before offering more thoughts about rights, let us turn to the second question, namely, of morality's extent. Even if you would not be violating the violinist's rights by unplugging him, the result being his death, would you not still be doing something wrong, if you did unplug? Morality embraces not only rights, but also qualities such as honesty, loyalty, kindness, courage and forgiveness. In our violinist tale, it would surely be cruel to insist on your rights straight away. If the violinist needed use of your body for just a few hours or even weeks, would not granting him that use be the decent thing to do? Of course, there are degrees and degrees. It would be extraordinarily kind of you, to accept the violinist attached for the rest of your life. Surely, morality does not demand such exceptional self-sacrifice. In that sort of case, maybe the violinist should recognize the unfair burden he would be putting on your life, and take the courageous path of sacrificing himself. Recall Captain Oates in Scott's disastrous South Pole venture of 1912. In order to avoid being a burden, Oates crawled out of the tent into the blizzards with the famous words, "I am just going outside and maybe some time." No one had a right to demand that sacrifice, yet maybe Oates did the right thing, despite its ultimate futility. The Violinist, Captain Oates and many other examples remind us that moral dilemmas do not all reduce to conflicting rights. Moral dilemmas can be fed from many quarters, and the feeding makes morality something of a mess. You may, for example, think that a lot hangs on the value of the violinist to himself, but also to society. With a violinist a lousy player and a depressed drug addict, you may feel far less inclined to allow him use of your body than you would were he a famous violinist of impressive skills. Think how your attitude would change, depending whether the violinist was also a burglar and wife-beater, or a surgeon capable of saving many lives. Yet should the morality of which lives we save hang on the value of those lives to the community? Rights range from the most trivial laptop, "I could give you rights over my laptop," to radically important ones concerning life and death. The United Nations seems to have uncovered a vast range of rights, taking us from the right to life to the right to maternity leave. This shows the danger of how, without care, rights talk becomes devalued. Certain basic moral principles, it seems, justify talk of moral rights. We typically accept that it is fundamentally wrong to kill another human being, and it is that which immediately grounds the right to life. In contrast, lots of reasoning would be needed to justify maternity leave as a significant right. Accepting that rights talk highlights certain moral principles as fundamental trump cards to be played when in moral dilemmas. The question remains of the source of those principles, a puzzle raised by Frog and Scorpion, chapter 63. Some philosophers have argued that there are natural rights built within nature, maybe courtesy of God, maybe of our human nature. Jeremy Bentham, an early 19th century thinker, came up with the wonderful quip that such talk is nonsense on stilts. Yet Bentham keenly embraced and promoted the utilitarian principle that we ought to seek the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Now, is that principle mysteriously built into nature? Is it standing on nature's stilts, though not God's, as nonsense? Suppose keeping the violinist alive, plugged into you for years and years, would maximize overall happiness. We should surely still doubt whether morality could demand that you sacrifice yourself in that way, that you should be so saintly however well the violinist played.